Imagine yourself evaporating, not just getting lost or disoriented, but literally vanishing without a trace. Then, 8 years later, you're found, not in a dense forest or submerged in a river, but inside a sealed, decommissioned mine. You're there, sitting against the wall beside your companion, as if you had simply fallen into a deep sleep. This is the reality of Yusuf and Melissa, a story about how a romantic getaway to Yalutoruk turned into a mystery that lasted 8 years, one whose resolution was more terrifying than any theory ever imagined. The March 2011 sun poured into Melissa's modest apartment as she reorganized her luggage for the third time. At just 24 years old, Melissa, a dedicated nurse, was looking forward to the weekend she had carefully planned for the two of them. Yusuf, 26, arrived punctually at 6 a.m. behind the wheel of his 2005 Blue Corsa. A mining specialist, he had deep knowledge of the rural roads, especially in that region, known for its long-abandoned mines. That's exactly where they were headed. "Ready for our getaway?" Yusuf asked, kissing Melissa's forehead. "More than ready," she replied, adjusting her backpack. It had been a long time since they'd escaped the chaos. The plan was to spend 3 days camping near Yalutoruk, photographing the historical mine landscapes and enjoying time alone, far from the city. Melissa had borrowed a tent from her brother, and Yusuf brought his new camera. They were as excited as school kids on a field trip. Before leaving, Melissa texted her older sister Carla, heading out now with Yusuf. "We'll be back Sunday night. Love you." It would be the last message anyone received from them. They left the city. Yusuf had studied the map thoroughly and chosen a specific area near 20th century iron mines, now completely abandoned and rarely visited by tourists, though still known to locals. "It's perfect for photos," he explained during the drive, "and it has a breathtaking view of the valley." Melissa smiled, taking in the green-covered mountains, historic towns, and relics of the mining past through the window. The weekend passed, and Sunday night came without Melissa and Yusuf returning home. At first, no one panicked. Maybe they had decided to extend the trip. It happens. But by Monday, when Melissa didn't show up at the hospital and Yusuf missed work at the mining company, concern began to grow. Carla, Melissa's older sister, was the first to take action. She tried calling Melissa, but only heard, "The number you dialed is unavailable or out of service." She tried Yusuf's phone. Same result. By Tuesday, after checking with friends and family with no leads, Carla and Yusuf's parents went to the police to report the disappearance. They went camping near Yalutoruk, Carla told the officer. They were supposed to be back Sunday night. The officer, familiar with disappearances in rural areas, took the report seriously. "Miss, I'll be honest. The area you mentioned is huge. Forests, hills, old abandoned mines. If they got lost or the car broke down on a dirt road." He left the sentence hanging, but the implication was clear. By Wednesday, a search operation was launched. Firefighters, police, civil defense, and dozens of volunteers joined the effort. The family provided details about Yusuf's Blue Corsa and the approximate area they intended to camp. The first few days were intense. Helicopters scanned the area. Ground teams scoured dirt roads and trails. Sniffer dogs were brought in. The hope was to find them quickly, maybe injured or stranded, but alive. The search zone was complex, with crisscrossing old mining roads partially overtaken by dense brush. Abandoned mines dotted the landscape, some sealed, others poorly fenced with rusty barbed wire. It was a labyrinth. On the 5th day, just as hope was starting to fade, a firefighter helicopter spotted a metallic glint on a barely visible dirt road deep in the bush. It was Yusuf's blue Corsa, parked in the middle of a path leading to abandoned mining facilities. Initial analysis was puzzling. No signs of an accident. The doors were unlocked, the interior untouched. Firefighter Corporal Mendoza, one of the first to inspect it, reported the gas tank was bone dry. The car's GPS showed a route leading directly to an old iron mine. In the back seat, they found intact camping backpacks. Inside the glove box was Yusuf's wallet with money and ID. On the passenger seat, Melissa's phone still had 60% battery. If they were in danger, they would have tried to call for help, Mendoza noted. But there were no missed calls or any sign of attempted contact. The GPS pointed to a specific destination, an old iron mine in Yalutaruk, deactivated since the 1990s. The road continued for about 3 more kilometers. Search teams immediately headed there, anxious to uncover the couple's fate. Yalutaruk was a decommissioned complex, crumbling concrete buildings, rusted equipment, and entrances either sealed or partially blocked. "Melissa! Yusuf!" the rescuers called out, their voices echoing through the hollow tunnels. But only silence answered. They checked every viable entrance and every structure that could have offered shelter. They found old soda cans and graffiti, but no sign of the couple. The search lasted another week. Every inch of the area was scoured, flooded pits checked by divers, deep shafts explored by spelunkers. The families even consulted psychics for answers. But nothing. It was as if Melissa and Yusuf had simply appeared on that dirt road and then vanished. Over time, official search efforts dwindled. The case was handed over to the civil police as a missing persons investigation. Flyers with Melissa and Yusuf's faces began appearing on street poles and grocery store windows, asking the same unanswered question: have you seen them? 8 years passed. For their families, every birthday, every Christmas, every celebration was a reminder of pain. The absence of answers was perhaps worse than confirmation of a tragedy. At least death would bring closure, a funeral, grieving, healing. Carla, Melissa's sister, never gave up. She ran a Facebook group called Searching for Melissa and Yusuf, which had over 15,000 members. She regularly posted updates, theories, and pleas. 8 years without a word. She wrote in March 2019, "If you're alive, if someone's holding you, please find a way to contact us. If anyone knows what happened, please have compassion." Yusuf's mother, Dona Rita, turned to psychics and card readers. "He's alive," she insisted at family gatherings. A mother's heart knows. His father, Jose, was more grounded. "Rita, it's been 8 years. If they were alive, they'd have found a way to contact us." Technically, the case was still open, but practically it was shelved. The original investigating officer had retired. The files collected dust as new emergencies took precedence. Now and then, false leads surfaced. Someone swore they'd seen a similar-looking couple in another town, but nothing ever came of it. The families carried on, weighed down by uncertainty, clinging to any shred of hope. The region where Melissa and Yusuf vanished continued on. Farmers worked the land. Some mines reopened on a small scale. Occasional tourists visited the historical sites. The couple's story became a local legend. The lovers who vanished in the mines, some called them, Zé Pequeno, who owned the nearest bar, shared tales of voices echoing through the mines at night. "They say it's them, calling for help," he'd say. But to most, Melissa and Yusuf were just a sad memory, a cautionary tale about venturing alone into the interior. They weren't adventurers or investigators, just regular workers who knew the area and the value of scrap iron hidden in abandoned mines. "There's a lot of metal out there," said Valdecir later. "Old tracks, rusty beams, forgotten pipes." Motivated by that, they entered a mine, never imagining they'd uncover a mystery buried for years. "It's just about knowing where to look," Valdecir said. One Wednesday morning in August 2019, he and Jason loaded their van with tools, torches, and crowbars and headed to Yalutaruk, unaware of the couple's story. To them, it was just another salvage job. Around 9 a.m., they arrived. The scene was exactly as the firefighters had left it years before, quiet, ruined, seemingly forgotten. "Let's start with that one," Jason suggested, pointing to a side tunnel that looked promising. As they approached, they noticed something odd. The entrance, which should have been open or poorly blocked, was sealed with a welded iron plate. "That's weird," Valdecir said. "Who seals a mine from the inside?" Normally, abandoned mines are closed with concrete and clearly marked by the DNPM, National Department of Mineral Production. This seal seemed improvised, almost secretive. But to scrap collectors, a metal plate meant money, no matter the story. With that in mind, they began cutting through. After 2 grueling hours with a blowtorch, they made an opening large enough to crawl through. As the final weld gave way, a rush of cold, stale air escaped, a sign of a space sealed for a long time. Valdecir switched on his flashlight and shone it into the tunnel. "Jason," he called, his voice strained. "Come here." Jason looked through the opening. The beam revealed, about 15 meters in, 2 human silhouettes slumped against the wall. "That's people," Jason muttered in shock. "Dead people," Valdecir added. They stood frozen, trying to grasp what they had found. The figures looked almost peaceful, a man and a woman side by side, as if merely resting. "We better call the cops," Jason said. "Yeah, we have to," Valdecir agreed. They left and drove until they found cell signal, then called the Yalutaruk police. "Hello, police. This is Valdecir. We were collecting scrap and found 2 bodies inside a mine." News of the discovery spread quickly. Within hours, the site swarmed with civil police, firefighters, forensic experts, and journalists. Detective Marcelo Arruda took over the investigation. The sealed mine became a crime scene, and the world wanted answers to the mystery hidden for 8 long years. Detective Arruda vaguely remembered the missing persons case from years before, but hadn't made the connection right away. 2 bodies found in a sealed mine. He jotted in his notebook. Initial suspicion, accident. The forensic team's preliminary findings were baffling. The bodies were seated peacefully against the rock wall. Decomposition had been slow, preserved by the dry air. Clothing and some features still intact. White male, approximately between 25 and 30 years old, dark hair, described forensic expert Dr. Fernanda Reese. White female, around 25 years old, long brown hair, wearing clothing suitable for outdoor activities. Dr. Enrique Costa, the medical examiner in charge, made preliminary observations at the scene. There are no obvious signs of external violence, such as stab or gunshot wounds, he reported. However, upon removing the bodies for further analysis, the findings were shocking. Both victims show multiple fractures in the lower limbs, Dr. Costa reported after the autopsy. This revelation added a layer of mystery and horror to the case, suggesting that Melissa and Yusuf's fate had been far more dramatic than initially imagined. Detective Arruda frowned at the information. Complete fracture of the right tibia in the male, fractures of both the tibia and fibula in the female. These are typical of a fall from a considerable height, he pondered. But how could a fall from a height occur inside a horizontal mine? The answer emerged when the technical team thoroughly inspected the mine structure. Above the spot where the bodies were found, there was a vertical opening, a shaft that extended up to the surface. This is a ventilation shaft from the old mine, explained engineer João Batista, who had been called in to assist with the investigation. These openings were used for ventilation during the mine's operation. This one is about 8 meters deep. From this discovery, a new theory began to form. Melissa and Yusuf didn't enter the mine through the side entrance. They had fallen through the vertical shaft. There was probably a cover on the surface that had deteriorated, the engineer continued. Old wooden boards, overgrown vegetation. They had stepped on the fragile covering unknowingly and plummeted into the mine. This theory would explain the severe leg fractures, consistent with the impact of such a fall. A fall of 8 meters on a solid rock would certainly cause serious injuries, but it did not explain the most disturbing aspect of the case, how the mine side entrance had been sealed from the inside. The analysis of the iron plate revealed alarming details. The welding had been professionally done using proper equipment. More significantly, the welding had been performed from inside the mine. Someone was inside the mine when that plate was welded shut, concluded welding expert Antonio Ferreira. It's impossible to carry out that kind of work from the outside. Detective Arruda felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying someone locked them inside the mine? He asked. I'm saying the welding was done from within, Antonio replied. How that person got out afterward, I can't explain. The investigation took a new turn after this revelation. It no longer seemed like a simple accident, but rather a possible homicide. 2 young people fell into the ventilation shaft, were seriously injured and left vulnerable, and someone appears to have taken advantage of the situation to trap them inside until they died. The skeletal analysis revealed even more macabre details, suggesting their end was tragic and deliberately hidden. Dr. Costa identified marks on the bones indicating they had survived after the fractures. The fractures show signs of inflammation, he explained to the detective. That suggests they survived for days, maybe weeks after the fall. Are you saying they died of hunger and thirst? The detective asked. Likely dehydration, the medical examiner confirmed. It's a slow and painful death. The haunting question lingered. Who could be capable of something so cruel? And how did that person escape the mine after sealing the entrance? The answer began to emerge when investigators found the maps. Research into the property revealed a vital detail. Although the mine was officially decommissioned and state-owned, the surrounding land had been leased for agricultural and livestock use. The lessee was Osvaldo Pereira Neto, a 67-year-old man who lived alone on a small farm 15 kilometers from the mine. Neighbors described him as a reclusive, ill-tempered man who avoided social interaction. He was always strange, said Dona Geralda, who lived on the nearest property. He doesn't talk to anyone and rarely goes to town. This information raised suspicions, as Osvaldo could have had access to the mine and the equipment needed to weld the iron plate. Investigators now needed to understand his relationship to the mine and whether he could be involved in Melissa and Yusuf's tragic fate. He's the type who shows up with a shotgun if someone gets near his land, neighbors said. When police approached Osvaldo Pereira Neto to question him about the mine, he vehemently denied any involvement. I never set foot in that mine, he stated. It's dangerous. Could collapse at any moment. However, a search of his property revealed damning evidence. In a makeshift workshop behind his house, they found welding equipment, torches, electrodes, and a portable generator. Additionally, in a locked cabinet, they discovered detailed maps of the Yalutoruk tunnel network, including information about ventilation shafts and hidden passages not found in official records. Where did these maps come from? Detective Arruda asked. Osvaldo remained silent. The most incriminating find was a set of photographs in a drawer, including an image of Melissa and Yusuf next to the blue Corcel. Faced with the evidence, Osvaldo finally confessed, but his account was cold and devoid of remorse. "They trespassed on my land," he said during the interrogation. "They were camping where they shouldn't, making noise and leaving trash everywhere." According to him, he had observed Melissa and Yusuf as they set up camp near one of the mine's ventilation shafts. That night, he removed the shaft's weak cover and camouflaged the opening with branches and leaves. "I just wanted to scare them off, make them leave," he claimed. The next morning, when Melissa and Yusuf returned and stepped onto the disguise trap, they fell into the vertical shaft. Osvaldo entered the mine through the side tunnel and found Melissa and Yusuf still alive, but seriously injured. They were groaning, asking for help. He recounted with no emotion. "But I couldn't let them out. They'd report me." Instead of seeking help, he returned home, gathered his welding tools, and sealed the mine's side entrance. He then escaped through a secret passage, an old ventilation tunnel that exited nearly a kilometer away. "I came back a few days later to check if they'd stopped making noise," he admitted. It was silent. Osvaldo's confession horrified even the most seasoned officers. He had sentenced two young people to a slow, agonizing death simply for entering land he considered his own, despite not legally owning it. "Do you understand they suffered for days?" the detective asked. Osvaldo shrugged and coldly replied, "Not my problem. They shouldn't have gone where they weren't welcome." The trial of Osvaldo Pereira Neto became one of the region's most notorious criminal cases. Prosecutor Juliano Vasconcelos sought conviction for aggravated murder, citing three aggravating factors: petty motive, cruel means, and actions that prevented the victims from defending themselves. Osvaldo's coldness and lack of remorse shocked everyone, while the media and public followed every detail of the trial, demanding justice. During the trial, Prosecutor Vasconcelos argued that Osvaldo had created a scenario of absolute despair for Melissa and Yusuf. They spent days, maybe weeks, injured, starving, and dehydrated, in total darkness, fully aware of their doomed fate, he said. The defense attempted to argue mental disturbance and self-defense of property, but the evidence was overwhelming. Osvaldo had meticulously planned the crime, executed it coldly, and continued living his life for 8 years while two families suffered in uncertainty. Carla, Melissa's sister, gave an emotional statement. "For 8 years, we hoped they were alive somewhere. It was torture, but at least there was hope. Learning they died like this, that this man left them to rot in a mine like garbage." She couldn't finish the sentence, overcome by emotion. Dona Rita, Yusuf's mother, was even more direct. "I would have rather my son died in a car crash. At least it would have been quick. This monster tortured our children to death." In December 2020, after a trial that captivated the public, Osvaldo Pereira Neto was sentenced to 35 years in prison under a closed regime, a sentence reflecting the severity of his crimes and society's outrage. Judge Antonio Carlos Magalhães was unwavering as he delivered the sentence. "The defendant showed extreme coldness and cruelty," he said. "Not only did he cause the victims' deaths, but he subjected them to prolonged and unnecessary suffering. Society must be protected from individuals capable of such inhumanity. Melissa and Yusuf were finally laid to rest in separate ceremonies in Istanbul. Hundreds attended the funerals, including many who had participated in the search years earlier. Father Roberto, who led Melissa's funeral mass, expressed a shared sentiment. Today is not a day of celebration, but of relief. At least now their families can grieve properly, knowing justice was done. Yıldırık was definitively sealed by the National Mining Agency with concrete and warning signs. A small memorial plaque was placed at the site in honor of Melissa and Yusuf, whose lives were tragically taken by human cruelty. May their story serve as a warning about the dangers of intolerance and violence, concluded the priest. After the trial, Carla founded the NGO Melissa and Yusuf, Alive in Memory, dedicated to supporting families of missing persons and advocating for more efficient investigations. The organization emerged as a legacy of years of searching and suffering, transforming pain into action and hope for other families. During a talk about the case, Carla reflected, "The police could have found my siblings in 2011 if they had investigated the property more thoroughly, questioned the tenant, and examined the mine more carefully. 8 years of anguish might have been avoided." The story of Melissa and Yusuf became a reference in discussions about improving search and investigation protocols in missing person cases. As a result, new guidelines were implemented, including mandatory investigation of private properties within search areas. Osvaldo Pereira Neto remains incarcerated in Ribeirão das Neves Penitenciária. According to prison staff, he continues to show the same coldness he displayed during the trial, refusing to participate in rehabilitation programs or express any remorse. He still believes he did nothing wrong, said prison psychologist Dr. Marshall Leite. In his mind, he was just protecting his property from intruders. For the families, the healing process continues. Dona Rita, Yusuf's mother, started a social project offering free psychological support to families of missing persons, aiming to ease the pain of others facing similar situations. The NGO founded by Carla continues to work to prevent cases like theirs from happening again, promoting awareness and improvements in search and investigation procedures. The story of Melissa and Yusuf serves as a dark reminder that evil can emerge from unexpected places, even from ordinary people living nearby, consumed by paranoia and lack of empathy. In their side-by-side graves at the cemetery, Melissa and Yusuf finally found the peace they had longed for in life. Their deaths were not in vain if they helped prevent other families from enduring years of unanswered pain. The love that united Melissa and Yusuf in life and death proved stronger than the cruelty that tried to erase them from memory. Perhaps that is the real victory in such a tragic story, proof that not even the darkest evil can fully destroy the bonds of true love.